In this video, we're going to be talking about digital-only purchases and retro gaming. So, I had this thought when I recently read an article about how the Xbox 360 is going to be supported till 2016, and then it's pretty much going to be gone, and XBLA with it. A lot of people, including myself, are very heavily invested into the XBLA ecosystem and the PlayStation Network ecosystem and Steam as well. And with the newer generation of consoles moving more towards cloud gaming and server-side gaming, subscription-based gaming, this would create a problem when it comes to the retro aspect, since a lot of games that were released previously on the previous generation, like the PlayStation and the Nintendo 64, were basically just disc or cartridge products that were complete. They were feature complete when they came out. They did not require any add-ons. They did not require any online purchases. So there were complete games that came out, and you could pretty much preserve them in your collection and play them whenever you feel like it, or show them off to your kids, or the future generation of people who would like to know the history of games and how they were developed and the mechanics and how they evolved. These are things that are interesting to certain people. But with the new generation, we are not able to do that, since PlayStation Network, XBLA, Steam, all these things at some point are going to go away and move on to what's the next best thing. And that's a problem. It's a problem for people like me, and it's a problem for YouTubers who present these older games. Like if you watch shows like Classic Game Room HD or Metal Jesus Rocks, they always have something interesting to say about the history of these games that they present and how they play them. They even have the systems that work on them, and it's nice to have a view of that and also experience those games. I played Chrono Trigger after watching after hearing an episode of One Up. They used to have a retro gaming podcast, and when I played that game, I was amazed at how good it was and how well it holds up even now. There was even a quick look or an endurance run, I think, of that on giantbomb.com. And it was very interesting to go through that game, watching that and hearing people talk about it. But that aspect, that retro thing, is slowly going away because games are becoming more and more online dependent, which is a good thing in a way, that because it gives you a convenience to buy those games when you want, where you want, and just download them. Don't have to drive to the store if your internet is fast enough. But we're losing a great deal with that. Those games, if you want to play them again, you probably can't, at least not legally. Or you can legally buy them, but you can play them on emulated systems, I guess. But even that emulation part is going to go away once games become server-side only. Like if you look at games like Diablo 3, Destiny, once those servers go offline, you're done. You can't play those games because even emulating them is going to be quite a challenge, and you still don't get the same experience. If you play the emulated servers on World of Warcraft, they can duplicate the experience to some extent, but it's not the same. The experience is not the same. You don't get that massive online aspect to it, and some of the functions just don't work right because it's not supported by Blizzard. And once those games are server side only, well, that's impossible. You can't. It's very, very hard to do. I won't say it's impossible. It's very, very hard to do for people. So if you have kids, or in the future, if I have kids and I enjoy playing games like Destiny or Diablo or any of the other online based games, my kids, when they grow up, they are not going to be able to relive that nostalgia factor that, oh, my dad sucked in this cave. He died like 1,000 times. I want to relive that. I want to, play that game again. And that bond kind of closeness feeling that you get with a game or interactive experience that you've shared, it's very, very hard to get. From my personal experience, I'm not very close to my family, but my dad used to play Tetris. He wasn't of the video game generation per se, but he did play Tetris on the Game Boy Advance. He was very, very good at it, and that always, it gives me a warm feeling inside when I play that game. It takes me to a time when I felt a bond towards that, with that feeling. And to relive that, I have to download a ROM because my Game Boy Advance doesn't work anymore. So I have to download a ROM and play it and emulate, and it's good that I can do that. There are ways that you can do that, and that's good, but that's going to change in the future. And that's pretty sad when you won't be able to relive those games. Games like Shadow Complex, which is a great game that was on XBLA, once it's gone, it's gone. You know, and maybe yes, it could be emulated because it was still a downloadable product. But what about the generation after that, when everything is subscription based? Because in the future, you're just going to have a box and you're going to have a cable subscription or an internet subscription, and that's what games are going to be. They're just going to be streamed to your box and you're going to play them. The PlayStation Now already does this. You can pretty much play a lot of the PlayStation 3 games and stream it straight to your PS4 and play it. You know, it's server side only, and I think in the future they're going to do that with the newer games, because one, it combats piracy, and two, there's a convenience factor to it. You don't have to download games and, you know, license them and pay for the license. You can pretty much play it on an hourly basis, monthly, yearly basis, and it makes it more accessible to people. You know, kind of like what arcades used to be. So those games, emulating them is going to be very, very hard or impossible. You can't emulate TV shows. I mean, I don't like to compare games to the television medium, but there were certain shows that aired on TV that never came out on disc or any tangible format that you can't find anywhere. Nobody recorded them. Same with radio programs. And games, even though you might have video clips of it online, it's not the same because it's an interactive medium. We want to play that. We want to experience that cave or that dungeon or that puzzle. And that might not be, you know, a viable way. There might not be a viable way to do that in the future if everything goes server side and everything is digital only. Even that's happening even now with games like Sega Outrun, which was on XBLA. I mean, the Ferrari license went away and you can't play that game anymore. It's not there anymore unless somebody downloaded a copy of it and JTAG'd their system and, you know, upload it. Well, that's the only possible way to do that. Otherwise, you can't experience that. And that nostalgia factor is definitely going to go away with the newer systems. So digital purchases have their convenience factors, but you do lose a lot. At least we don't lose, but the future gamers, they're going to lose a lot, especially those interested in the history aspect of these games and how they came about. As you can see, I have Shinobi playing back there, and it was one of the first Sega games that I ever got. So I have really fond memories of that, playing that with my classmates at home and messing around. It was fun. So let's get into the emulation and piracy aspect. So piracy is basically when devs don't get their money when they publish a game, and they don't get the money they, you know, spend on that, or they don't make a profit out of the games, and people just steal them and use the media for whatever purpose they want. That's piracy. That's stealing, and I don't condone that in any way. The only positive thing about piracy is that it makes it easier to preserve these games. If you go to any of these ROM sites that are there, they have a lot of games that you simply can't buy at the store. You simply can't play them on a system that doesn't exist anymore. You can't buy a Sega 32-bit anymore. You might be able to find a Dreamcast somewhere, but even those are hard. So what happens to these games? You know, how are we going to play them? How are we going to enjoy them? Well, if you go to Nintendo's website, they do have a section where they talk about emulation and ROMs and their stance on it. What it boils down to, or what they say, what their opinion basically is, that if you can't buy our game anywhere, if you can't play it, there's no way you should have it. You shouldn't do it. You should not emulate. You should not have ROMs, because it's our property and it reduces the what do you call that, antiquity value, or whatever you want to call it, of our game. You know, it reduces that. It reduces the value of our game. If we don't release it, you should not be able to play it. And that's a very, very, very I don't agree with that. That's an odd way to put things. You know, you release those games like Yoshi's Island, Mario, to the public, for the public to play. And of course, you did get paid for that. I mean, people did buy your game, and the people who weren't born yet couldn't buy your game, but you did release it to the public. And now, you have no platform that those games can be played on, and you expect people to just say, oh, okay, I shouldn't play it at all, even if they own it. I don't agree with that. I think once something is released for the public and the developer doesn't want to support it, it's their problem. They should support it, or people should be able to get those ROMs and play them and experience them and learn from them, or buy them. If you offer them to people, in a way that they could buy it, that would be great too, because most of these people who download ROMs for their systems and play them on their Android, or I'm playing some on my Vita, is because we have a nostalgia towards that. We enjoyed those games growing up. We bought those games growing up, and we want to play those again. And Nintendo is good about that in certain ways. They do release a lot of older titles on the 3DS shop. PlayStation Network also does that to a certain extent. I haven't been too much into Xbox, so I'm not sure about that, but they probably do that as well with some Xbox One titles. Backward compatibility is difficult, but, well, they do what they can. At the end of the day, the whole piracy argument is a complicated one. I think developers should get paid for what they create, but that is only as long as they actually let you buy it and let you play it. I mean, if they don't let you buy it or play it, how can they expect to get paid? It doesn't make sense. And sure, it's their property, it's their right to do what they want to do with it, but once it's released to the public to play, I mean, it's kind of hard. You're better off just letting people buy those games. I think it's much better to do that, because that way you're earning something, and the guy who's playing your games also, he feels good about making that investment with you. So that's my stance on digital. I mean, sadly, the PlayStation Network can't be accessed by the PSP, and the Vita is going to go the same way. Once the system is gone, you can't play those Vita games that were online only. This is a trend that happens in the mobile market. If you look at games like Dungeon Hunter 2 or Prince of Persia HD, those games are basically unplayable on your system, and you can't even buy them on some systems. And that's because the technology is moving so fast that the lifespan of these games is very, very short. Some of them don't even support 1080p, and now we're up to 4K, and those games are not going to receive 4K support that easily unless Gameloft changes their mind about these things, or these other companies change their mind about these things. One very popular game, one of the first games I ever played on the iOS device, was called I, Dracula. If you try to play that game on your iPad now, it's not going to work. It's either going to be it's really glitchy. It's not going to work well at all. So you can't experience those. And this is not about money. This is not about if I've invested $1,000 on the App Store or $1,000 on XBLA or PlayStation Network. It's not about money. This is purely about the nostalgia, about the tangible aspect of games which is lost, and about the ability to relive those moments that you enjoyed, whether in high school, whether in college. To relive that moment is something that money, it's not about money. Money does not factor into that. Reliving that is something special. And unfortunately, we're going to lose it with the newer generation. I think this is the first generation where we're actually going to lose games. We have already lost games like Warhammer Online, Tabula Rasa to some extent. I think it's emulated somewhere. And maybe Diablo 3. Diablo 2 is still very popular. A lot of people play that. But if it was online only, we wouldn't be playing that game anymore. I mean, it would have been gone. So yeah, that's my view on digital purchases, the future of online. Even though it's a bright future, we do lose something. And yeah, that's about it. And if you like the video and agree with me, go ahead and like it. If you dislike it, go ahead and dislike it. But as always, thank you for watching.